Special welcome to the members of the student reporters. Nice you're here. On behalf of our school, I'm very happy, very pleased to open this special session for the local students and for our guests coming from Baden. I wish you an interesting panel. I think it's once more one of the highlights of this open forum. And I hand over the panel to the floor. Please, Mrs. Chairman. And panelists, give them a warm welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Arundhati Gupta. I'm a global shaper from the Bangalore hub, and it's a privilege for all of us to actually interact with you in this open forum to expand our Davos experience. And I hope that you have a good time this afternoon. So the topic that we had today was entrepreneurship and going beyond boundaries. We have 4 really amazing entrepreneurs, and I'm looking forward to a really crackling discussions where I hope that we unearth some real gems about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Before I ask them to make some opening comments and tell us a little bit about their entrepreneurship journey, I'd like to use my job as the moderator to maybe set out two important thoughts that came to my mind when I looked at the topic. So, I'm a social entrepreneur by profession myself. I live in the South Indian city of Bangalore in India. I set up an organization 4 years ago called Mentor Together, which provides young children who are doing poorly in schools or children who have been abandoned or destituted in shelters, a caring relationship with a mentor. And what we've seen is that that relationship can be very vital in them developing some life skills and really understanding what their role in life is. When I look at the decision that I made to be a social entrepreneur, I see that it was really the result of the risk appetite of my generation in India being much higher than what my parents' generation had. I was previously in the finance sector, and when I entered the job market, I just looked at where was it that I could make the most impact. That was my single focus as a millennial, as many of you. And I didn't think twice before giving up my finance job. It was actually not at all a sacrifice because I was just so enthused about this idea of connecting young people to more mentors. And I think that's a highlight of a lot of choices that I see my generation making as entrepreneurs. And it's completely inconceivable to my parents' generation because their risk appetite was so little. When my parents' generation was around the time when India had still not opened up its economies, and getting a safe government job was your pathway to success. And they still sometimes struggle to understand the choices that young Indians are making now. But because we're so hyper-connected to the global environment, and we see that for better or for worse, the culture behind entrepreneurship and the rock star entrepreneurs that come out, we're very much motivated by them, and those are our role models more than the people who tell us that we shouldn't be doing this. So I definitely would put out the importance of changing risk appetites amongst young people for them taking up entrepreneurship. The second topic that I'd like to put forth on the table that I think other panelists may bring up as well is just the scale of the problem of youth unemployment. It has been central to the discussions amongst the participants at Davos as well. 3 of us in this group participated in the forum's International Business Council debating youth unemployment yesterday, and the numbers are just staggering. Right? They've analyzed and said that this is a structural unemployment. This is not cyclical. It's not likely to go away anytime soon. There are over 70 billion unemployed, 70 million unemployed young people right now. And the effects of changing this problem could be huge, right? So if we take more young people out of unemployment, the effects that it could have on GDP is huge. So that's something that an entrepreneurship can be critical in, that as we're talking about what to do about these young people who seem to be emerging out of education without the right skills, or who are not finding the right jobs, and what future awaits them. So that's the second topic that I'd like to put forth on the table about entrepreneurship and the importance of that in tackling unemployment. So those are just two ideas that I finished with. So now let me move on to the panelists. I'll introduce them briefly one-on-one and allow them to then take about 5 to 6 minutes each to share their entrepreneurial journey, what the key milestones of it have been, and what would they like to really share with y'all as insights for y'all. So I'll start from my left. I'll start with Alejandro. So Alejandro and I are members of the Global Shapers community of the World Economic Forum. Alejandro is the Chief Executive Officer of an energy company called Enertiva, and I'll let him explain more.
Well, yeah, I'm a Costa Rican, Central America. I've been an entrepreneur all my life since I was 5, 6 years old. Right now I'm focusing in a solar energy company in Central America, lots of potential there, and doing it with a lot of passion. It's the 5 minutes. I have the 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So lots of young people in the audience. So just to get to know each other, which one of you want to have a company eventually? It's part of your plans? Could you raise your hand? Okay, we're talking about 5% of the population. I think 5–10% of the population are entrepreneurs. Maybe after you hear our stories, we could have more hands raised. I started since I come from an agricultural background in my family in Costa Rica. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, and I come from a high middle income family. And when I was in junior high, I started selling mangoes, to my colleagues, to my friends, and they asked me if I was poor because I was selling that. And my teacher banned my business. So basically, at a real earlier age in life, I had to struggle with the environment. And a big problem with entrepreneurs is that it's about the culture, right? We have to work in the culture of the entrepreneurs. And basically, to tolerate failure, that's really key. You could be really smart, but if the conditions aren't right, you could fail. And it's really good to start early, being really young, because that way, if you fail, then the consequences are not that bad. And when you're 30 or 40, you have real experience, and your chances to be successful are higher. When I just entered college, I just think about girls and partying, not much about economics. I study economics. And so I started making these parties, 5,000 people parties. It was the most profitable business I have ever been. Lots of fun, you're really popular. And that was really weird because one of my first companies, it was a huge success. After a party at 5 a.m. in the morning, we went to our house and count money. Really, really happy. Then when I finished, college, most of your family expected to go work for a big corporation. I entered to the investment banking and consulting business. I've been there for 3 years. I learned a lot of frameworks. So basically, it's also a good thing to work in a big company, to learn best practices, to learn how things are done. And, but it got to a certain point that I was, I need to follow my passion. When also I was, working there, I started a restaurant, Mexican restaurant, which was really weird because I don't know how to cook. So that became one of my best learnings I don't say failure, I say learning. We get robbed. It was a disaster. But eventually I sell the restaurant, so I came alive from that. And I also started an engineering company, electromechanical engineering, with what used to be my best friend, And that's also an important part, because you have to have emotional intelligence that you can develop relationships, and based on that, you could succeed. So, many times you sacrifice relationships, you sacrifice your family because of your business, and also you need to manage a lot of pressure. So you have to figure out, and one of the things I recommend is, try to find different activities, because you learn the hard skills in the class, but you also you need to learn the soft skills. Are really important. And after I started working in investment banking. I was working 20 hours per day, and it used to a point that I said, well, what's the most valuable resource I have? And it's time. And I decided to scale my business, my engineering business, and it turns out into an energy company. The energy market, it's really have some major changes in the actual times. Basically, it's one of the biggest industries in the world. And for decades, it was pretty stable how it works. But right now, with alternative energy and the high oil prices, that's changing a lot and lots of opportunities. And basically, it started with one person. Right now, we have 35 persons in 4 different countries, and things are looking good. So basically, that's my story.
Excellent. That was really inspiring. Thank you so much. So if I could ask Thomas next. So Thomas has had an interesting career crisscrossing business and now government. So if you could tell us your story and what have been your key insights from all of these experiences.
Thanks a lot. It feels a bit strange that I need to talk to you in English here, since the audience is probably 99% German speaking. Nevertheless, I as compared to my fellow panelists here, I'm less a private sector entrepreneur or social entrepreneur. I see myself more as a political entrepreneur. Let me tell you a bit about my background. I was in high school, as many of you are now as well, and what in a way started this whole political entrepreneurship was an exchange at the age of 16 when I went to live with a host family in the United States, in Chicago, for a whole year. It was a totally new experience to leave Switzerland behind, to leave my friends, my family behind, and set up my tent in a totally new country, and also having to learn these social interactive skills of building up a new network from scratch in a foreign country. Having returned, I did the traditional path. I entered University of St. Gallen. I studied economics, financial and capital markets at the time. I went into banking. But also already during my studies at university, this feeling of having to explore other cultures and learning from other cultures never let go of me. But in a way started when I was in the US as a 16-year-old. So I did an exchange first in Malaysia. I went to live in Malaysia for half a year, did their economics courses as well on a little island called Penang. In my last year at university, I also did an exchange in Tel Aviv in Israel. Less for the country, but more for the region. I was very interested in these cultural and religious conflicts that existed in the Middle East, what I could learn about them, about the Muslim culture, about the Hebrew culture, and of course also a small, of course, the Christian background, which is there as well, to see these different interactions of culture and religion. And also, and this is a bit the little brother of the World Economic Forum, I participated for a whole year in the St. Gallen Symposium. So at the University of St. Gallen, there is every May, there is a 3-day symposium organized only by students, run by students, of course not as high profile as the World Economic Forum, but nevertheless the list of speakers that we get is also quite impressive each year. So this continued opening up my world. Nevertheless, I went into banking, something secure, as you said before, something secure as most university graduates choose in Switzerland and elsewhere, I suppose. I didn't have the courage, as some of my friends, to become immediately entrepreneurial, because it is a big step to let go of a monthly salary and decide I'll become entrepreneurial and do something on my own, as the three of you have done. Nevertheless, after 3 years in banking, I didn't feel that satisfied anymore. We were advising one corporate client after the other. I was doing one discounted cash flow analysis after the other. That's a type of model of valuing how much worth a company is. It didn't feel that, I felt I was doing always the same thing, and I didn't see a bigger sense in what I was doing. I therefore started to apply for universities abroad, and I got accepted to Harvard University to do a master in public administration. This was an incredible experience. You know, United States and I would say many Anglican countries, they have a very different university structure than we have in Switzerland. They have a university structure which is much more based upon interaction. So here in Switzerland, for all those of you who are still going to university in the future at some point, here in Switzerland quite often you're kind of sitting in, you're writing down what the professor tells you to do, you go back home, you learn it by heart, and you write it down again at the exam. That's at least how it was for me in 1998 when I started in St. Gallen. I'm sure it changes as well here in Switzerland. In the US, it's very different. In the US, you get to prepare a lot before actually going to class. And the whole class discussion, the whole class is really a discussion. It's an interaction between the professor, who sees himself or herself more as a moderator, and all the students in the class who are participants. So I remember my first day at Harvard where I was totally overrun by all these American students. It's about 70% are still American students, were still American students in my class, who were very interactive, and I was totally not used to that. And of course I had to learn how to catch up and be as interactive as well, and pose questions and disagree with some of my participants in class. So great experience, also many great speakers who come by and told me about their story during these 2 years in Boston. Upon coming back, I still did not have the courage of entering public administration, of doing politics. I went back to a private sector company, a consulting firm called Booz Allen Hamilton at the time, which had a big public sector consulting arm, but of course was also very strong in the private sector. I was again sent abroad with projects in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Kuwait, Moscow, Germany, and London. Again, very interesting projects, 2 to 3 month projects that you do in the beginning as an analyst in a bigger team of 3 to 4 people. Later on then as a project manager, where I was responsible of a team of 3 to 4 people and had to deliver success. I was accountable for what our firm achieved at the client side. But again, I did not get that satisfaction. I still looked for the bigger purpose in what I was doing. And so when I was staffed on a longer project based in Zurich, I took this as a moment to say, well, let's try to enter politics. As most of you know, entering politics in Switzerland is something you really have to do bottom up. So I started to become more active in the municipality where I lived, in Bar, in the canton of Zug. Shortly afterwards, our president stepped back, and I was asked whether I would like to be president of the local party in my municipality of 20,000 people. So I accepted that. It was about 1 monthly meeting from 7 to 9 p.m., so the whole time intensity was not too high. Shortly afterwards, there were the elections for the cantonal parliament. We had people withdrawing from my party in my municipality, so I decided, well, I'll give it a shot. I tried to run. I was elected, and only a year later, I was also on the list for the national parliamentarian elections, and there I overtook an incumbent, an existing parliamentarian, because I mainly made a very active election campaign, and he was already 12 years in parliament and was not that active anymore. So this is where I am now, for 2 years in parliament now. It's an incredibly interesting experience. It's a very broad field that I need to cover as a parliamentarian, from finance, economy, infrastructure, energy, political questions also, how many votes or how many people should sign an initiative in order to bring it up for a public vote. So a very interesting political experience. Maybe 3 lessons that I would like to give to you, what I would recommend you doing, or what helped me at least to find this path in life. Number one, be persistent. There's always obstacles in your way, no matter what you do. Be persistent, try to follow your goal, no matter what comes up along the way. The second one was already told to you by Alejandro, is be interactive, make as many connections as you can, profit from a forum like here in Davos with people you get to know. It's much easier the younger you are, I think. At universities it was much easier. Once you're in a job, it gets a bit harder. Now in politics, I realize it's much easier again. You get to know many different people, but make use of that. Get to know as many people as you can and learn from them, especially if they're older, more experienced than you are. And the third one, engage in politics, especially here in Switzerland with our direct democracy, with our really unique system where you can enter politics so easily, even on the municipal level, or do something for an NGO. Make use of that. Our system only lives and can only persist if we have many young people who engage, who say, I'm not just doing my investment banking or what other job I have with a good income, but only if you also engage in your community, if you also engage in politics. And this is what I really recommend you. I think together, if everyone, no matter what party he's interested for or what political views he brings to the political process, I think it's really important that every citizen participates in politics as a whole. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. I have some follow-up questions for you, but I'll get to it at the end of everyone's first round. So I'll move on to Pavel. So Pavel is also a global shaper from Kazakhstan, and he has had an interesting trajectory of being born into a family of entrepreneurs and then building on that to do something else for young people in Kazakhstan. So all yours, Pavel.
Thank you. Thanks to Borat that I don't need to explain a lot about where is my country. Yes, I was born in a family of entrepreneurs, but in my country they called self-employed. For the 20 years they have, my father and mother have only one grocery shop, and of course it's not so scalable and not so big enterprise, but still by their example, I was looking from my childhood how they serve to their community, to their clients, to their customers. And of course, I was amazed by many, many other examples. Kazakhstan is not as least developed country as this movie was shown. Yeah, we have an internet and TV in our villages. And at all these villages, even children know about Steve Jobs, about Bill Gates, about those brilliant guys. And this is really amazing now. There's a whole new generation looking forward just to start up something new. But I didn't realize and explore this, really long time ago. It was really few years ago. Of course, we have a really hard legacy of Soviet Union, whereas everything was in means of production was in the hands of government, and everything was planned. And we know now that it's completely wrong. It's not works this way, and it took a few decades just to transform this culture. I understand that any other country in comparison with the United States have a really, maybe least developed entrepreneurial infrastructure, but still we have worst, one of the worst in this world. And the things that I start my entrepreneurial journey, it was also like our first speaker tell, it's during school age, but I won't go really deep in that. I start up a lot of initiatives. I cannot call these companies, but still it's a lot of different projects. And by the end of the day, I now call myself intellectual entrepreneur. Why? because I didn't borrow any money to start up any of my business, and I'm mostly selling the air, not something, I mean, really that you can touch. I sell in service in my country, and I have a distribution company, and we are operating in 8 regions of the Kazakhstan. These 8 regions, and it may be 10 Switzerland. I mean, it's really big. And in this situation, the working in the business of logistics and distribution, and you can imagine it's pretty hard. And it's but still, it was a very bright idea that I got my family business in my hand, this one grocery store. In fact, at that time, it was already 2 grocery stores. We sell it, and I'm talk a lot with my parents that why we need to do something bigger that we had at that moment. And of course, in this situation and these moments, you need to encourage someone with your idea. If you understand that you can create more, it doesn't need that your banker or investor or your parents believe in this venture as you believe. And since for the last 4 years, it was really, I mean, ups and downs, but it's really profitable business. And back in 2011, I get a call from one of my business partners from Kyrgyzstan. It's the next country to the Kazakhstan. And they organized Global Entrepreneurship Week in their country. And they told me that no one organizing this event in Kazakhstan. Do you want to join these initiatives? I tell yes. Email to the coordinators in Washington, and they replied me after a few hours, let's go, let's do it. And we, for preparation, took 1 month, and we organized pretty the same gathering that you have today. Invite some prominent speakers, public figures, just to tell their success story. And it was just a simple idea. We didn't realize that it brings so enormous, I mean, big demand from the young audience. After the end of the conference, about 20 or 30 young people occupied me and tried to ask me, oh, when you organize another conference. Then I was not ready to answer them. I tell them, oh, just take my business card and keep in touch. But they really kept in touch with me. Often when you get in someone's business card, you never respond to that man. But most of those people, 20 out of 25, emailed me. Okay, and then we decide to work something in a structural way. And then we've organized the Young Entrepreneurs Club, which I'm also co-founder in this social venture. Main goal of this organization is just to encourage young people to start up something new and to show that entrepreneurship is great. I understand that most who raise a hand when I'm asking them would like to be an entrepreneur, they think they receive a message as, would you like to be rich? It isn't work so. It's also failures and a lot of pain sometimes, but still, it's really worthwhile. My country, it's an oil-rich country, and there is a advantage and there is a problem on another hand. Most of the people, especially young people, are dreaming to work in big oil companies, in a government. And even they can spend 2 or 3 years waiting for the place in these companies. Nothing, they don't do anything during this time. And this is a very, very silly, I mean, waste of the resources. And we decided just to promote entrepreneurship in a simple way. For today, after 3 years of operating, We have 5,000 members. We helped for only in the last 6 months to set up 50 new businesses, and we invest in them, small seed money. We have a mentorship programs and education program which helps them a lot, not in a financial way, because from my experience, I understand that you can start up a business without any, really big capital investment. This is the point.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pavel. So last but not the least, we have Christopher. So Christopher is Canadian, but has ventured far away from his native lands to do something very daring and innovative. He's also a member of the forum's Young Global Leaders community, which is a community of exceptional people mid-career. So Christopher, if you can tell the audience a little bit about your venture.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll talk a little bit about my journey and more importantly, what it is I'm trying to establish now and why. I think that's a big question we should always ask ourselves, why we're doing what we're doing. My journey was non-traditional, probably the opposite of my fellow panelists. I spent 20 years working in mid-sized companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, and it was rewarding, and we did good work, and we gave back to the community, but it wasn't enough. And when I joined the Young Global Leaders, I was introduced to some tremendous people who were basically looking to save the world in their own way. And they introduced me to this concept of becoming a social entrepreneur. And I had never thought about that before. I always thought the world was divided between government, for-profit enterprises, and non-profit enterprises or non-governmental organizations, NGOs. But there is a middle path, a social entrepreneurial company which is for-profit, but a major part of its mission is to deliver social value. And I thought about that, and I realized that was the path that I was missing. So I ended up quitting my corporate job and co-founding a mineral exploration company in Afghanistan. And it's been an incredibly rewarding experience for the last year and a half. It is a for-profit business. We have investors, and we have promised them a very good return on their investment, and we are looking to ultimately build a very large copper mine in the country if we can get that off the ground. But in addition to the pure for-profit and pure business aspect to it, it is a true social enterprise. And that's the main reason that I'm involved in this, because there's a vision that's much bigger than any individual. Sure, I could go open a large copper mine in British Columbia in Western Canada or something in Europe, but how much of an impact is that really going to make? Who's going to notice? How does that really build the community of the country? Not so much. But if you look at a country like Afghanistan and what they've gone through, not just in the last 10 years, but the last 100 years, 500 years, they've had conflict and they've had poverty, and on just about every index you look at in the world, they rank at or near the bottom. But that's the place where a mine could make a huge difference. They have no industry right now. There is no mining sector. They have people with shovels and pickaxes digging things out of the ground. But if someone, either my venture or somebody else, can create a large mining venture and the seeds of a whole mining sector, they can lift first some villages, then a province, and then ultimately the country out of this poverty. They can create a viable industry sector, not just mining companies, but the companies that supply them. Who supplies them the fuel, the power, the food, the equipment. You build an entire ecosystem in the country. And really, there's only a couple of places in the world where you can do that, and Afghanistan is one of them. Now, the challenges are enormous, and I'm sure you can all imagine what they are. But some of the biggest challenges are the fact that there's really nothing there to start a business. And we often take for granted in other places that there's electricity, that there's access to gasoline or diesel, that you have workers who are literate, that you have access to people with post-secondary education. Much of that doesn't exist, and much of that we need to build. So specifically, what have we done on the social development side to make it a true social enterprise? Well, there are many things. The first one is that we've committed a significant portion of our equity to reinvest in social development. So over time, as that equity grows, we will reinvest that money in other social entrepreneurs, not necessarily in the mining sector, but other social entrepreneurs who are trying to do good and build businesses in Afghanistan. Second, we have made legal binding environmental commitments at the early stage. This is a very early stage greenfield development. It's going to take 5, 7, 10 years to get a mine put in place. But we've made legal commitments that the licenses that we hold, even if they get sold at some point in the future, and they always have to adhere to what the World Bank calls the Equator Principles on the environment. Now, we didn't have to sign up for that right away, and some people have told me straight up that I'm decreasing the value of my business by proactively putting these obligations. But it is the right thing to do, and particularly in a country that does not have great environmental enforcement, social enterprises and companies need to do that themselves. And so making that a legal commitment up front is a very important principle, and we've managed to ensure that the other entrants into the market are doing the same. In terms of local employment, the traditional mining model is you hire local unskilled labor, and then all of the skilled labor you fly in from Australia, from Canada, from somewhere else. Well, how does that help the country? Not very much. So we've made a commitment to employ 95% of our staff being local Afghans. And that is far above and beyond what any other mining company has been able to do in other countries, even where there is a mining sector. So what does that mean? Well, that means we're going to have to teach our people how to read and write. That means we're going to have to take people who have very basic skills, but a lot of entrepreneurial drive, and we're going to have to teach them how to become geologists, how to become engineers. We need to invest now in an educational system to deliver us and the rest of the industry mining engineers 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now when they're needed by the sector. All of this would have been much easier to do just by flying in some expatriates. But that's not the commitment we've made. Other commitments in terms of paying a living wage to all of our workers. For example, you could get a laborer to work for $50 US a month. That's the standard market rate. But he can't feed his family and put a roof over his head for $50 a month. He'll work because he has no other option. But that's not a living wage. So we are designing our pay structure to ensure that even the lowest skilled workers can afford to feed their families. And it will have a slight impact on our bottom line, but in the medium term and the long term, we will actually have workers that are much more productive and much more loyal to the company. And then we're hoping to publicize those wage rates in an effort to incentivize other mining companies as they come in to do likewise. So even though it is a for-profit enterprise, there's massive commitments that, quite frankly, will make our lives much, much more difficult, but are very important for the country. The one last thing I just want to leave on is another program that we have, which is to build small and medium-sized suppliers for our business. Even some basic things like in early stage exploration, we need wooden sample boxes. Now they're very specific size and specific shape to hold the rock samples that we need. The easiest thing for me to do is to call up my supplier in China and tell him to ship over a container full of of these sample boxes. Be cheap, be easy, they would be there in 6 weeks. But again, how does that help the country? So what we're doing is we're shipping 12. And I'm taking those and we're going to individual carpenters and small businesses around who do woodworking. We say, these are the boxes we need. Can you build this? Can you produce this? And those that can produce at high quality, we're going to order from them. It may cost us a little more. It's certainly going to take a lot more time, certainly going to take a lot more effort. But as other mining companies start to follow our example and start to come in, there's now the beginning of an industry base. And that's what's going to employ people, and that's what's going to take the country out of poverty. And if it's not us, it better be somebody who looks a lot like us.
Excellent. So I'll start my round of follow-up questions with you, actually, Christopher. And if we could just have quick, short answers so that we can give some time to the audience as well. So at the round table that both of us attended, Bill Gates said that serving two masters, profit and social good, is difficult. And a lot of what you say seems to show that you disagree with him. So have you found the magic formula for that?
It's always dangerous to be on the wrong side of someone as successful as Bill Gates. The counterpoint I would like to make is that many of the other panelists did agree that there can be, it is possible to serve two masters. What I took away from the panel, actually, which was Tony Blair facilitating, Richard Branson, Muhammad Yunus, and Bill Gates talking about philanthropy and the future of capitalism. What I took away from that is there are many different models for doing this. I would not say that the model that we're employing is the right model for all of you. I think it is the model that works for our business. It works for our mindset. It works for the challenge that exists in Afghanistan. I think if one were pursuing some of the things that Bill Gates pursues in terms of eradicating malaria, I think his model is more appropriate. So I would encourage those of you who go into social entrepreneurial ventures to keep an open mind about structure, to keep an open mind about your pathway to do these things, because I don't believe there is a single right answer.
Okay, thank you. Alejandro, so one of the things that I've seen is either young people have too many ideas and not all of them, lead themselves to entrepreneurial ventures, and they just scatter their energy towards nothing that ends up being productive. Or you have that fear of, should I even take that first step, right? That, oh my God, am I the person ready to do this? So as someone who experimented with so many ideas, how did you pick the right one? Was there some kind of energy or vibe you got off an idea that told you that this is worth my time?
It's also, market-based, and, there are a lot of bad ideas in the world. And basically, you have two things if you want to be successful in entrepreneurship. You have the idea and you have the execution. So if you have a great idea but bad execution, you're not going anywhere. And it's the same way around. And also, many successful entrepreneurs, like the ones that were in the panel, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, they had many failures. So, I'm going back to my earlier statement that even though you're really intelligent, statistics says that you're going to fail. Not one time, not two times, maybe 3, 4 times. And that's, Thomas was saying to be persistent. And it's basically, that's the key. So, and saying that also, it's better to fail when you're, 16, 18, 20, because you live probably with your fathers. And if you fail, nothing bad happens. It's much more complicated if you fail when you're 40 and you have kids and all of that. So, making maths, if you start, talking about entrepreneurship when you're young, then when you're 30, then you have real experience and you could be more successful. So basically, start young, and not only the idea, but also the execution.
Sure. So, Thomas, it often seems like being an entrepreneur is a far more complex environment than being an entrepreneur, where you're setting up the canvas yourself. So given that you've so successfully, and you've identified that you've gained returns on the investment of time you've put into even corporations or working in bigger groups, what advice would you give people to do that, even if they find themselves in a non-entrepreneurial situation?
Well, only stay as long as you can, as you really have the feeling you're learning and you're contributing something. I think in every job, maybe at some point, especially when you're young, in the past it was like this, that you entered into a profession and you stayed there for the whole period of time. Some were very happy doing that, and others were maybe after 5 or 10 years they became a bit frustrated, but they didn't have the courage to leave. Luckily, I think today there's a different culture. Number one, failures are more accepted than they were in the past. Still less, I think, in Europe than, for example, in the United States, where it's almost a requirement to have failed a few times. In Switzerland, it's still a bit regarded as being not so good to have failed a business. And the other one is, especially when you're young, it's totally acceptable that every 3 to 5 years, not every year, but every 3 to 5 years, you look for something else, you look for a different job, because maybe you find out after 3 to 5 years it's not the right job, it's not the right boss that you have, you're maybe not challenged as much anymore after that time, and then have the courage to leave and start something new again. It always, as starting a business on its own, it always requires a lot of courage, but do this. I think you can only learn from doing that and from jumping into the cold water and experience with something new.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. So what I understood, Pavel, is you're trying to set up a support network or an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that's something that appeals to a lot of people, especially when they're in university, because entrepreneurship is so much better experienced as a community. So what are 2 or 3 key things that go into setting up a very good and successful entrepreneurial network, whether it's young entrepreneurs or mid-career?
Hey, in terms of network, it doesn't matter. You young entrepreneur, old entrepreneur, experienced, not. You just need to go and speak to the people. Even Nordic culture, which is Russians belongs to, it's very, kind of rude and not polite. People are not looking so friendly. But even if you are overcome this challenge and go to speak to the people, ask for the help, for advice, not for the money, but for advice at least, it works, and then it's the first outcome. Another one is doesn't matter if you are starting, for example, cheese production. You don't need to go and speak directly to another cheese producer, but you can find a mentor in any other sphere. Of course, who is another cheese producer, he will be not good advisor for you because your potential company. The third one, I guess, of course, you are not also only taker, you're also a giver. Here at World Economic Forum, I try to communicate to as much people as possible. But if I met someone who is not maybe very relevant to me, or it's not from another organization which is dealing with completely different things that I do, and I know that Alejandro, for example, he will be very helpful to Alejandro, I'll go and introduce Alejandro to this person. In the networking, and especially which is helpful for the business, it's really important not only to get from the people, but also give to the people your time, your advice, your patience, your feelings.
Excellent. So now we'll open it up to the audience. Very inspiring stories, a lot of advice. I know a lot of you all are young and we may seem intimidating, but feel free to ask us anything that's in your mind. If you could just say your name, introduce yourself, and then direct your question to any one of the panelists. And I think we have mics that can be passed around. So, yeah.
Hello, my name is Jacopo Cati. I'm a student in Switzerland at high school. And I have a question to Mr. Logan. And you said that you made a lot of long-term commitments in Afghanistan. How do you envision your business or the situation of the security situation in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of the Western forces next year?
That's a great question. The security is the cornerstone of being able to operate in Afghanistan. And my partner and I had the pleasure of been working there in other business for the last 7 years. And we've got deep relationships with local security providers there. We've also specifically chosen a mining site that is in the safest province. I say safest, not safe. We have we've designed our base camp along the lines of how you would design a forward operating base. So it is very secure. Our logistics and supply line is secured in the same way that the military is secure there. So we spare no expense and spare no effort to ensure that the people and our business will be very secure there. And that is a big part of the value of coming out of this, because most investors and most business people assume that the security situation will deteriorate, and it might. But if we can prove that we can operate, and we can operate safely for a number of years, that will provide confidence for others to follow. And so we believe there's value to that. We believe there's tremendous value to becoming a visible leader in showing that things can be done in this country.
Someone in the middle? There's a hand up. There.
Hello, my name is Zoltan Matuca. I live in Baden, Switzerland. And I have a question for Mr. Koktyshev from Kazakhstan. We hear about the political situation in Kazakhstan, and there are also a number of state-owned companies. How is the business environment? Is it friendly for entrepreneurs, or is it rather difficult?
It's an answer this way is safe and friendly for startups, but not for scale-ups. If you are big and become a big company, it's very possible that someone comes from quasi-government or from the government and take your business. This is another point. We're doing good in different indexes and World Economic Forum competitive index, doing business. We write in top 50 countries, and it's quite good. Another point in terms of foreign trade, and it's another point of growth, I think, for my country. Most of the entrepreneurs, they're really landlocked in terms of their city and their country. They're not dreaming big about, for example, at least going to the region, to other stands, even Afghanistan. It's quite, easy to do business, and there is many organizations promoting export and import. But still, we're part of the customs union along with Russia, Belarus, and the tariffs is high. If you want to sell us something, it's not a good business. But within a country, it's quite safe and I think friendly. And the culture is also changing. Of course, it's now I think it's very supportive. Some big names, entrepreneurs support these causes and go in and volunteer for some organization in the boards and so on. And it's a really good sign for me.
Anyone else? So let me ask this question. If Alejandro's question had to be asked to all of you all again, how many of you all would consider something entrepreneurial or have thought of something that you've put back on the back burner, but now you're thinking it's possible? Show of hands.
We killed initiative.
Can I say one point about
Absolutely.
that? Yeah. You know, it's important to have not only of entrepreneurs, but it's really important to have an entrepreneurship mindset. So we need entrepreneurs in the government, like in the case of Thomas. And basically, you know, entrepreneurship mindset, it's about, you know, solving problems, trying to have a better world, and do what you love. And, you know, you have like two things you have to consider if you want to be an entrepreneur. If you like, well, money, like most of us do, you know, of the 100 more richest people, 66 are entrepreneurs. But you have also to take into account that for every one person there, there's millions of people that, you know, try but never achieve that kind of wealth. And the other thing is that if you want to change the world, you have, you know, social entrepreneurs. So they were talking about the panel with Mohamed Yunus. And basically, with social entrepreneurs, you could impact millions of people's lives and in education, water, etc. So basically, my final message is, you know, it's really, really difficult to be an entrepreneur. But, you know, if you want millions of dollars, or if you want to impact millions of people's lives and have a better world, you know, it's one option to consider.
Great. Sure. So maybe we could do this as just someone has a question, we'll take the question. Yeah. The second row, please.
So, does it work? Yes. Should I ask the question in English, or would the audience prefer German?
We prefer English. If someone's willing to translate for the rest of us, or we.
No, I can. The audience didn't say anything, so I will speak in English. My name is Sylvia. I worked as a professor, so I stood in front of a group like you many times, and you're awfully quiet. And that is, I think it's a shame, because now there is opportunity for you to really ask those people all the questions that I'm sure are going through your mind, and you're very shy. So I want to encourage you. That's my first point. The other point is a sort of a comment coupled with a question. And the comment is, if I look at those guys over there, they're awfully successful. And this is probably intimidating for you, because you're going to school, you're students, you're not there yet, and they are up there, and they are part of the World Economic Forum. Wow. Now, the way they have presented themselves, it's a success story, and I'm sure they're very successful, but failure was also stressed. Now, my question is, how did they get support? Because in order to climb up the ladder, you need support. And I would say, from what I deduct there was a lot of family support with some of them. I haven't identified that with Chris, but I would say at last for the three other guys, and probably even for you with your family, I suppose.
Yes.
So family support seems to be very important and not so easy to get. Depends where you come from, and if your family is not upper middle class, it might be a little more difficult. So my question to the guys up there would be, do you have a recipe for the very normal crowd coming from very normal families, how to climb up the ladder? And the second question would be related to all the teachers, professors here in the audience. How can you be more supportive? Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think the first point is really, to some extent, it's a cultural thing. As I said, like, I mean, I see it with international students that generally are a bit more active, but it's just a question of time. I think this is not a bad sign if people are first waiting to see what others say. But regarding the what support you get, I think it's very important that you ask for it. Like, I'm not coming from a rich family at all, and I'm not coming from a political family either. but it's more that, number one, believe in yourself. If you have a goal, be persistent. Again, my number 1 point, be persistent, believe in yourself, and follow that goal. And then ask for advice. Then that's my second point. Make conversations, ask for advice. Everyone is happy to give a young person advice. I myself, a mentor for students at the University of St. Gallen who are now already 10 years younger than I am. And they ask me questions like, should I go on exchange or should I stay here and follow that program? Should I do an internship with a company or should I directly continue with my master's degree studies? So ask for advice, get advice from different types of people. Different types of people will give you different types of advice, and then digest everything and with your knowledge and your experience, make what you think is best for you. So ask for advice. That's what I would advise you. Thank you.
I remember the first time that I went for a global fellowship when I was 19, 20, and I thought that I didn't know how I got an entry into that room because I felt so out of place. But I felt that if someone had opened the door for me once, that I was never going to say that I needed another door to open for me, and I've just taken it from there, and everything I pay it forward and ensure that I make enough of one opportunity so another door opens. So a lot of this may sound cliched, but you really have to really stick your head out and do something if you want to gain the most from things. So with that, we're almost done with time, but would someone like to ask a final question? Oh, we have a lot of hands now. Okay, sure, please.
Hello, my name is Hannes. I work for Royal Dutch Shell, so
Yes.
I'm with an energy company. You've explored the concept of social entrepreneurship today, but you've presented it slightly in a way that you need to step out in order to make a change. Now, what would you recommend people to bring a change from within? So where there are already existing structures, how can you leverage the skills that you have pointed out that are common to an entrepreneur and leverage these to make a change from within? Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I can
Go for it, Chris.
take that. In my previous life, before becoming a social entrepreneur, I ran strategy and marketing for a $7 billion global logistics company. And I also ran the corporate social responsibility piece. And we did a lot of good. We set up a program with other providers to do disaster relief logistics after typhoons and earthquakes and flooding, mainly in Asia, in Haiti, and in Indonesia and Pakistan. We were the first responders in. We were the people who got the World Food Program food into these remote villages. So there's a lot of good you can do with a big company. You can't, it's very difficult to do that by yourself, but if you've got a $7 billion logistics company and you partner with other companies and you've got a network of 22 warehouses in Pakistan, when 2/3 of the country is underwater, you can still distribute food. So there is a lot of good that can be done through large companies, and I would never want to discount that.
Adding on that also, in the forum, social entrepreneurship is also a major theme. And basically what we are seeing is that not only social entrepreneurs are evolving, but also, big businesses, that triple bottom, people, profit, planet, and also this new thing about shared value. So we have also CEOs, the Coca-Cola company, Philips, that, they are taking into account many measures that could relate to social entrepreneurship. So basically, the good thing is that not only social entrepreneurship, but also big businesses, and with that, they are going to demand to their providers, SMA and small businesses entrepreneurs, trying to adapt to these changes and also take into account the environmental and social factor. So I think it's evolving into be, just a competitive advantage to incorporate all of this.
Right. Sorry, there's one question, so we'll take that question. The girl up there.
Hi, my name is Milena. I also come from Costa Rica. And I left there, I'm 15, because I found it too hard to have big world possibilities. So I just want to ask you, Alejandro, how did you do that? coming from there?
Yeah, well, not being shy is part of one thing. Emotional intelligence is key, and trying to leverage, worldwide networks. So if you're a student, for example, there's an amazing community which is called Aeschi, and basically you travel all over the world. So I'm only 28. Well, I'm more older than you, but not that old, I think. And I've been in several countries. Traveling, it's a big part of it. Backpacking. It's not that expensive to travel all around the world. And you have to invest in education. You have to invest in working experience, but also traveling and all the soft skills are really important. So it's good to have a plan, and you're in the right path. You're from Costa Rica, which is what we call the Central American Switzerland, and right now you're in Switzerland. So I think you're doing the good. Yeah, you're doing good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We're right at the mark of 3:45. So given that it's Switzerland, I don't want to exceed the time. But all of us will be here. If anyone had any question and you still didn't muster up the courage, we'll be here. You can talk to us. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope it was worth your while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we didn't promise too much. If I compare this panel to the previous years, we started this about 5-6 years ago, and then it was young global leaders only, a more senior panel than it is now. And these young global leaders, they grow older year by year, as we all do. Yes. And then the last 2 years, because the Global Shapers was founded, it was very junior panel, as the 28-year-olds now participant. And I think we found the good mix for this year. I think that's a very good way to follow up for the next years, to have this mixture of experience and very young entrepreneurship. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your contributions, for your little contributions to the discussions, but the discussion anyway. I suggest that there might be a Costa Rica connection. And there might be as well a Zug connection, because there are quite a number of students from Zug here. Thank you. And to finish up, I would like to thank the Miss Chairman and the panelists.